lies, shenanigans.
All right, so this week, Mayor Muriel Bowser said that Joe Biden, needs to get it together with this federal teleworking policy because I guess all of the buildings in DC are empty. So she basically told him that he needs to get teleworkers back in their chairs and inside some of those empty buildings. And so my question is she right? Should Biden be getting rid of teleworking policies for federal workers? Or should Biden just continue to keep allowing them where needed? So I'm gonna go ahead and start. Let's start off with. I'm not gonna start with Lizzie
He's
because
not going to start with the girl that lives in
I'm not
DC.
gonna start.
Heaven forbid
We're
he
gonna come
starts
back
out
to
with the girl who
Lizzie.
lives in DC, who has on her DC 51st State T-shirt on. But go
So,
ahead.
so we're gonna come back to Lizzie. So okay, we're gonna start with Gianni. Gianni, so what do you think about ending teleworking for federal employees?
Um, I think that honestly, I feel like we don't necessarily know what's going on still with COVID. So I feel like leaving them as like working at home, let them stay home. I feel like I'm not mad that she offered the housing though, because that's a good point. I
The
didn't read
housing
into
option.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the housing option. That makes the most sense. And she also said something like let government officials use it somehow. I feel like okay, whatever with the government officials, but the housing makes sense, and like I would like to know the plan about that because I didn't see too much of that information. Like who would we be housing? Because it also said something like she wants 100,000 new residents in DC. Why?
Hmm.
You said
Because I'm
why?
at that.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
just
To keep
tax
the city
money.
growing, to keep
Shoot.
it prosperous.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay. But
Yeah.
as long as we're taking care of
Look
DC
at Lizzie with
citizens,
some money.
but yeah, it's about
Wait,
the money, of course. But I feel like I'd let the people work from home. I don't see anything wrong with that, but I also feel like it is something that you should do with those office spaces.
Kevin Daxon online says, "Get to work." And yes, the city gets the revenue from lunches, parking fees, commuting fees, etc. And Jacqueline Robbins says, with all due respect, Mayor Bowser, she needs to get it together and do something about the crime and homelessness problems. What do you think, Robbie?
Or she could multitask. Go
She
ahead.
can multitask, right?
Mm,
Yeah. So I, the way that you pitched it, Neo, is a little problematic because it's not exactly accurate. Because she
okay.
did say, you know, either use these buildings, fill them with federal employees, or flip them so that they can be converted to affordable housing, which would then help house the 100,000 people that they want to bring to the city. So, in that respect, she's right. And I think it's a great flex by Mayor Bowser. So, because we have a lot of infrastructure that's left sitting empty that unfortunately taxpayers are paying for. I've been talking about this since the dawn of COVID remote work. The feds have an opportunity to offload ongoing maintenance costs for aging infrastructure. They can make some money through the sale of these buildings and office spaces, and North America needs more affordable housing. So I fully support this flex on her.
Fully support. So you fully support.
I'm not saying I fully support her flex. Her
Okay.
flex. Not. I'm not saying I fully remote. I fully support people being forced to go back to work in these buildings. I think it's a brilliant flex on her part. Use these buildings for what their intended purpose is. But I think that the hybrid model that we have at this point with people teleworking is a win for the taxpayer. Because if we remove federal employees from these buildings, we as taxpayers don't have to pay for these buildings. And I think it's a wonderful move in that respect. But it should be performance based. If you're not doing your job, well, then we've got a nice new shiny office for you.
Okay. All right. All right. So let's go ahead and get to the,
Thanks.
the DC resident, Lizzie.
DC resident here. First and foremost, let me just say Muriel Bowser is not the only mayor in this country that is faced with this problem. New York City, Eric Adams has been screaming this for the past year and a half. And he has the power to do something about New York City workers versus what the mayor has to do. Remember, guys, DC is not a state. She is very restricted in what she can and cannot do in terms of governing the city. And when it
Yeah.
comes to maintaining or making decisions about federal buildings, she does have to go to the White House. and pitch to Biden. So I don't think it was her necessarily saying, you better do this. To say, look, we have this situation. We are in a situation where we need economic recovery for the city after the pandemic. If you go downtown in DC right now, there are certain parts of downtown that are a ghost town. China, ghost town. You go around the area, Metro Center, all those areas. It's not just that these buildings are empty, but when those buildings are empty and you don't working in them, the buildings, the business around them are not functioning.
Can you repeat
The
what you were
businesses
saying?
around
Repeat what you were saying, Liz. You were breaking up there a little bit. Go ahead.
the business, it's not just that those actual federal buildings are empty and no one's using them. It's the businesses around them that also are not functioning
Right.
because
Right.
they
The
no
business
one
around them.
they
Right.
are not no one is frequenting those
Yeah, I've been
businesses.
down there
I
too. It's
remember
empty.
See, and I'm
it's
glad you brought that up. I forgot about that because if you follow that money trail, if you look at a lot of these locally owned businesses around federal buildings, who owns them? I know in Canada, in Ottawa, they're looking, that's one of the arguments, but who owns these buildings? High ranking officials within the government. So, yeah, they want federal employees back in the federal buildings because they want them in their coffee shops and sandwich shops and bistros.
Yep.
and see, it's a little bit different here because a lot of those buildings here, those businesses here are mom and pop businesses, are private
A lot of mom
businesses
and pops are
that
caught in it too, for sure.
Some. Yeah.
exactly. And then it's not just those businesses, but it's also transportation. People aren't going to work. They're not using transportation in the city. So it's all about getting revenue back into the city, revitalizing the city. And like I
Sure.
said, it's not just DC, it's New York, it's Portland, it's San Francisco, it's several cities in Ohio. Like mayors across the country are trying to figure out, okay, what's our plan now? Like no one thought
Yeah.
COVID was going to come in and shut us down for 2 years. So what's our plan now? It's not that, we think all of these workers are lazy, but something has to give.
So
Something has to give. And I do believe, honestly, I do believe it depends on your position as a federal worker. Because if you work for the government, you might not need to be at home. Because then at some point that could include, do we want Congress working from home? No. So we need to be very clear and very specific about who needs to go back to work physically and who can work remotely. I think that there can be a happy medium, but there needs to be a conversation. It can't
Mhm.
continue to go the way it has been going
All right.
because DC is losing money.
So look, so I'm looking at Jacqueline Robinson. She responded to Kevin Thaxton online. She says that a lot of restaurants and other businesses are still closed downtown because the entire workforce hasn't returned. And he's right. But there are still a lot of jobs that one can do remotely. And see, that's the thing that got me was the fact that she kind of led with in teleworking. 3 years of forced teleworking is proving that teleworking works. I worked for a contractor that actually was more efficient and more successful when they went to teleworking. I guess because the employees were just, I guess they were using their time more effectively, but they were definitely more effective. And there are certain jobs, like you say, where certain situations where you need to be at a desk. But for those jobs that it's not, why would you force people to sit in hour-long commutes, more traffic, burn gas, polluting the environment, not to mention the ongoing risk of infections from COVID and the cooties we already had back in the day with cold and flu. And that's only so that city residents can make money off the federal workers having to pay for parking, lunches, and travel, like Kevin Thaxton said online. I mean, I do like the alternative of basically dropping the leases on some of those buildings or reorganizing federal staffing. So I totally agree with that. But I wish she would have led with that and that been the focus of her conversation where, hey, Biden, you need to get it together and figure out what you're going to do about your workforce but not suggest that teleworkers just go back to work for no apparent reason.
That's just throwing
I
it out
mean,
there. The conversation hasn't been had yet. Like no one has sat down to talk about these things. And
Sure.
so, yeah, maybe you come in hot. Maybe you come in hot to the president to get his attention to say, look,
You know?
yeah.
this is a conversation that we need to have. But it can't continue to go on the way it has been. And listen, I'm someone who has, for the most part, worked remotely for 3 years now. Okay. I'm not that
Right.
excited about going back into the office, but as a journalist, I do miss and understand the need to be in a newsroom. It's very
Yeah.
difficult to do
There's
news,
some
breaking
jobs you
news.
have to
Exactly.
My wife
And
is a
even with
research
teaching,
scientist. She needs to go in, to
exactly,
do
or
stuff.
even with teaching. And one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I'm not back, one of, not the only, but one of the reasons why I'm not back in a university classroom right now is because I don't want to be in person.
Mm,
That's just me. I
mhm,
don't want to be in person with students. So that's, the hit that I take.
mhm.
But the conversation needs to be had. And I think the Biden administration, Lord knows we wouldn't even be talking about having a conversation if we were still with the Trump administration. But I think this is something that
Your
the Biden
boy.
administration, up until this point, has ignored,
Mhm,
And
yeah.
so they need to sit down and figure out what they're going to do about this.
Yeah, they got to figure out what they're doing with these buildings because it is costing taxpayers money. I went to one of the buildings recently, and I'm telling you, it was a literal ghost town. I mean, the lights were on, the heat pumping, and it was just a few people in this huge, I'm talking, it was a huge federal building, and there's nobody there. But like I say, teleworking should not go away, especially if
No.
if the sole reason is just so federal workers can, help pay for, because DC is super expensive. It's a super expensive city to live in, and all we would do is be paying to make it even more expensive. So I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not good with
Even on
telework going away.
even
They
on
need to
my
figure something
street,
out though.
even on my street, there are two government buildings on my street. One next door to my building, one directly across the street from me. Ghost
Yeah.
town,
Ghost
empty.
towns.
And it has affected the few businesses that are on, because there's some restaurants on my street, but also the food trucks. There used to be food trucks
Mm-hmm.
lined up
I remember
every
that.
Mm.
day.
Mm-hmm. They
I
used to come
haven't
to
seen
my.
a food truck in 2 years. Haven't seen a food truck
What?
over here in 2 years because
Wow.
there's no one there to go to them. The people who live here, they're either working during the day, and so they can't go to them, or there are a lot of elderly people that live.
That's kind
They're
of
not going
sad.
downstairs to a food truck. And so, yeah, so something has to give. And I think, maybe this is a wake up. Maybe this is a wake up.
So Gianni,
Yeah.
you're an entrepreneur, right? You have your own business, and
Yeah.
you're not a worker. So you don't technically telework. You have to go in and run your business. I'm just curious, how would you, what side would you really take as a business owner? If you're one of those business owners going, down where all the in the lunchtime, you would expect a huge business of lunch rush. I remember
I see.
years and years ago when I was in my early 20s, I was a CVS at L'Enfant Plaza, which is like really downtown DC. And all we
It's
did
around
was
the corner
have
from
this
me.
have a huge lunch rush. And that was it. That was the extent of our business, lunch rush from these federal workers, right? That was the extent of
That's
the business.
yeah, pretty much.
I'm curious, you as a business owner, how do you feel about like being that business owner who's down there and you don't have that lunch rush. All you have is trickles all day long.
I feel like it kind of. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of felt that in a way with the whole Airbnb thing because that was the bulk of my business, especially starting off. And
Mm-hmm.
then since a lot of issues here in Atlanta, you can't basically do Airbnb as legally as you were able to.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like one, it would. I think like as business owners, as an entrepreneur and small business owners, it's like you're having to find more ways to be creative without just the internet.
I like that.
It's like you're having to be more into the community or building your own community in a way. Like you have to have some type of established, like even if it's like email newsletters, I feel like it would affect me badly, but you would have to adjust.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
And
think that
Yeah.
that's
And
similar to
if
what
you
Robin
repurpose
Johnson just said. Real quick, Robin Johnson said online, COVID taught us businesses have to evolve. Good, Rob.
And that's it. If they do repurpose the buildings and make them
yeah,
affordable housing, then you're replacing that workforce that is just transit in your community with actual residents in your community that you can make real connections with and get real repeat business with.
that's true.
And let me just say
People.
this about the affordable housing attachment. Please don't believe that if they do convert these buildings to residences, that they're going to be affordable housing buildings. And
Right.
that's not what's gonna
That's
happen.
what I'm
It's gonna
scared
be
of.
probably 10 to 15%.
At
That's the
best.
minimum you have to do in this city. And they're not gonna lose out on all of that prime retail money, making the whole
Mhm.
entire building affordable housing. So when she said, she's trying to attract 100,000 residents to the city, that's not 100,000 affordable housing residents.
Mhm.
Okay, she wants people to come to the city who have money to spend.
Money.
There will be
Of course,
there
yeah.
will be some space set aside for affordable housing. But even with that, it's still money coming into the city. And given the business that you're in, Gianni. So there are there were three laundromats, not laundromats, sorry, three dry cleaners over here.
Oh, dry cleaners
Um,
got
Yeah.
hit hard.
three dry cleaners over here. One of them closed down completely
Hmm.
because no one's running downstairs or dropping off their dry cleaning before or after work. There are two over here that are still hanging on by a thread. But it's brick and mortar businesses are gonna have to rethink how they operate.
Rethink
But
it.
for some of them, it's gonna be a complete shutdown for some of
Shut
them
down.
because there's
Yeah.
no other way to operate other than in person. So it's a conversation that we need to start having
Sure.
that we didn't think we were
It
gonna have
reminds me
3 years ago.
it reminds me of like Blockbuster and Redbox. Like what happened to
Mm,
like Blockbuster
good
and
point.
Redbox and
Girl,
then the whole thing. But like with small
Well,
businesses. So
Netflix killed, like you say, Netflix killed Blockbuster, and Blockbuster failed to switch and adjust in time to save themselves because Netflix
but I mean,
destroyed them.
I don't feel bad for Blockbuster. Blockbuster killed Arrow's video. Mm,
Arrow's video.
there.
They don't know Arrow's video. That was a
I know
local.
you know Dio,
Yeah,
though. I know you
Arrow's
know
video.
Dio.
They killed popcorn video in my area. I get it.
Arrow's
I
video.
get it.
All right, we're going to let's end the conversation on that one. Arrow's video. All right, so we got some comments online real quick. So Kevin Thaxton's like, CVS. Yeah, I hated CVS. Never again. I still have nightmares about CVS. And I wasn't even there that long. I mean, I was like, this horrible work experience. Jacqueline Robinson said, our courts are also having difficulty with handling civil cases because many of the clerks and other personnel are working remotely. She says, we lost a large restaurant near my office that had been there for 25 years. They relied on government and private industry employees and large tourists for breakfast and lunch. The rent was $40,000 per month, and it wasn't sustainable without the revenue. Yeah, because the rents
Mike
are extremely
Winter-
high.
Mike
Yeah.
Winter on YouTube says they were teleworking long before the pandemic. Most of the places I know of share office space and require workers to FE to function. I'm guessing telework at least 2 days per week. So yeah, I'd like the hybrid models where you have
Hybrid is
office
good.
space that's being used to hotel in, and I think that makes
But
sense.
even
If
then, you can
come-
consolidate. You can consolidate, even with the hybrid model. They can consolidate what they're using right now significantly.
considerably.
And the other thing is, I just want to point out before we go, I was looking up the numbers. There are twice as many federal contractors than there are actual civil servants. And the contractors are also teleworking. Matter of fact, a lot of them have permanently gone to teleworking. So they had empty buildings, but then they're giving up their lease spaces as well. So I just think that they just have to adjust. The federal government needs to
Also, think
adjust.
about who's going to be getting these government. jobs in the future, because
I'm
they're
losing you. Say it again.
remote. I said you also have to think about who's going to be in the future if everything goes remote or
Mhm.
continues to be remote. Who's going to get these federal jobs in the future? Not going to
Yeah.
be DC residents.
No.
It's going to
That's
be somebody in California, in Hawaii,
Oh.
who doesn't have to be here.
absolutely 100%. All right.
But you can put that in the job requirements that if the job requires you to be there or to be a resident of the state and or city, the municipality that you're serving, I
Oh,
think that would make
Rob.
sense to have that as a clause. I don't
Oh,
outsource
Rob.
that. I know.
You don't know how they get over with that with football. Let's have a conversation off camera about how they get around those rules with football. You're supposed to live in DC to play for a DC high school football team. You live way out in Maryland and use someone
Mhm.
else's address.
I know some people like that
Mm-mm.
actually.
We all
Actively doing it.
do. We all do.
All right. Is this truth, lies, or shenanigans?
It's true,
That's a lot of truth.
unfortunately.
I
It's
mean,
It's-
she did have
It's
some
the
truth.
truth.
She didn't just only say go back to teleworking. So she did say that the federal government needs to get it together, and they do.